Y'all, today we have some breaking Wizard101 news. Wiz is about to change multiple spells in the upcoming update, including what I would argue is the most popular treasure card in the game. We got some new teasers today. I've linked the source in the description. But the topic of the day, self-damage hits. The two spells I got teased to be changed in the upcoming update are Dark Pact and, more importantly, Empower. So Dark Pact and Empower, the way they work right now in Live Realm, they do moon damage to self and give you things like pips or blades. It looks like they're redoing this whole self-damage mechanic so it applies more evenly across all of the schools. So what you see on your screen is what they're going to be doing to Empower. Now, I'm starting with Empower because I think it has broad implications across both PvE and PvP. But first, let's talk about what this card does compared to what it does right now. What you see, right, is a new mechanic somewhat. It's basically self-damage, but it's based on your max HP. So this new Empower, presumably it's coming out in the Darkmoor update. It basically still gives you 3 pips, still does self-damage, it's still 1 pip. But the major difference, instead of doing 300 moon damage to self, this does 5% of your maximum HP. What's very, very important to note, right, and I think this is like the make or break for whether this is even going to see any use or not, this mechanic is very, very similar to Backlash from Shadow spells. And if y'all don't know how these work, right, let's say that I do a bunch of things as Shrike likes. At the end of it, I'll take 10% Backlash. But this Backlash ignores everything else on the field. If I have a tower, that 10% doesn't become 5% while using the tower. If I have a weakness on me, that 10% doesn't become 7% and use the weakness, right? It ignores everything and it does the 10% damage. Empower, this new Empower, and I guess all self-damage hits in the future will be doing this as well. Now, in PvP, what this means is Empower can no longer be used to clear weaknesses, but it also, I guess, won't be a bad move when you have a tower shield on, because you're not going to be removing your defense. That being said, every single school other than Death that uses Empower is taking way less than 5% of their max health. If y'all don't know how Empower works for Death, however, right, it uses your Death stats even though it does moon damage. Very, very similar to Hydra, right? It uses your balance stats even though it does elemental damage. So maybe if you were a Death with, like, you know, 200 damage using this, yeah, maybe you would take about 5% of your health, like 600. You might even take more. But every other school will be struggling to use the spell in a way that's more meaningful than it is right now. Keep in mind that they're also going to be changing the main way that people are getting pips in PvP with Dark Surge. Dark Surge is also going to be self-damage based on your maximum health. This is based on a teaser from a few days ago. We will no longer have a way to gain pips without doing damage to ourselves unless you count Steel Pip, which you have to pay in order to get. Now, as if the PvP implications aren't enough, PvE arguably is going to be affected even more than this. The name of the game now to clear weaknesses in PvE, let's say you're going against a boss, you're scared of things like a Freet, Verlin Plague, weakness. I would argue that the current version of Empower is the main way to do it. But if it's going to be doing that much damage to self, I think the name of the game now for weakness clearing anyways is going to have to be Purge. Now, if you're wondering how Purge works, it just removes 3 weaknesses. Chances are in PvE, practically, you could use this in place of the Empower. You're obviously not going to gain pips as a result. But the accessibility of this, if you're not willing to put in the dozen training points it takes to train this, it is a little hard to get otherwise. The TC, you can only buy with arena tickets. I do have a few of these, but each of these were 50 blue arena tickets. And keep in mind, yes, I have a lot, but that's because I PvP a lot. For someone starting off, it's actually pretty hard to get Purge. There's a will cast Purge talent from the new Lemuria raid, but that also involves raiding. So if you want to not use training points for a good weakness counter in PvE, you're probably gonna have to do PvP or raids, or wait until an event comes out like Portal Apparel or Fantastic Fight where you can redeem other currency for Purge TCs. Now, the big elephant in the room, and this is something that's hard to predict. If y'all don't know, Empower, outside of its uses in PvP and PvE, it's also a form of currency in Wizard101. And Empower's being a currency isn't a coincidence. A lot of people, right, in order to get things like Mega Snacks, they will do this like big garden of couch potatoes. And one of the passive things that you get for having a big couch potato garden like this is tons of Empowers. As a result of this, people trade Empowers in exchange for other things in this game. They also sell for tons at the bazaar if you want an easy way to get hundreds of thousands of gold in bulk. And the fact that Empowers are universally usable, that means a lot of people are going to be buying Empowers from the bazaar, meaning the price will stay up when you sell them. What I mean by the fact that it's hard to predict what this change will do to the Empower market is that we don't know how much the demand is going to go down. Will this just stay cemented as just a value for gold TC? Or is the fact that people are going to be using it way less in PvP and PvE going to drive down the actual demand for it and increase the supply, right? This is just like simple economics. The second the supply is high, as in it's not used, the worth of this will go down. It could actually have some pretty serious implications in trading servers, other things. If a TC is not used as much, it will always go down in value. I don't see 5% of your HP ever being worth it for Empower, and that's not even talking about the other change that's being proposed. This is what the new Dark Pact is going to look like. It looks like they're also changing the name to Dark Tribute. But again, compared to what it does right now, right, which is just a little bit of moon damage, you're looking at 5% of your maximum health lost to get 235 blades. Now, I'm actually unclear on whether this card is going to be like a buff to the 25% that main deck Dark Pact is right now. If it is, actually could be more used on like a death, right? Again, because of the way that death stats work with things like Dark Pact and Empowered, you're actually going to take less damage by using the new Dark Pact on a death. And if it's a 35 blade instead of a 25 blade, actually a pretty decent buff for death. But here's actually who I think is going to be affected by this, and this might actually be a good thing. There are two schools right now, I would argue, that are really, really good when they have the Deadly Null Dragon, which gives 3 Dark Pact item cards. But these schools, Fire and Balance, would obviously be affected with this Dark Pact change. A Fire would be taking 1,500 damage for using all 3 of these, and that's actually not that uncommon in longer games. That's way too much. A Balance would actually take even more than that for using all the Dark Pacts. And the main reason why these schools are so good with Dark Pact is both of them have very good answers against shields, right? Like Fire can hit through shields. Balance has multi-hits, which can go through tower shields very easily. So for a lot of people, weakness feels like the best thing to do to debuff them, but then you would be removing the weakness with Dark Pact. Now, as I said earlier, right, this is like backlash type of damage. It's not going to remove weaknesses anymore, which means not only are you going to be taking more damage, you lose the utility of removing a weakness. This is something that I think is way more relevant with Dark Pact because it's a buff. Now, I'm going to go as far as to say I actually don't mind this for the simple reason that in order to get this pet, you have to do a nullity raid, and there's no pity system with that raid, meaning you have to run it over and over again, and because this is an exclusive pet body, you just have to get lucky enough to get the drop. I've heard of people doing 1 run and getting this Dark Pact pet. I've heard of people doing dozens of runs and not getting the Dark Pact pet. A lot of people have a big issue with how hard it is to get ready for PvP, how hard it is to get the optimal setup. This should shake things up. I think Fire, they're probably, instead of doing this, they're just going to be running a bubble pet. I think that's going to be the very logical next step, or maybe some other pet that's available. There might be better pets now, since I feel like Dark Pact has been meta for so long. And Balance, if they're running Storm Duel School, they might go over to the Beetle pet, or if they're running a different duel school, maybe just another item card, maybe just some diversity for Balance pets in general could be cool to see. But I think the big takeaway from the Dark Pact change, as opposed to the Empower change, is actually positive because it lowers the barrier of entry for PvP. It increases the amount of diverse pets you see, and honestly, it might give Wiz more of a reason to add more pets for schools like Fire and Balance. But these are some big changes, y'all. I didn't expect them because I thought darkmoor was just going to be about shadow magic and shadow updates, but this is a very, very obvious, like, different class of spells altogether. We'll see if we see more changes like to sacrifice, immolate. Those are the only 2 remaining self hits that I don't think we've seen a teaser for, but I think there's some massive takeaways. I think the Empower market will be affected. I think that these will see way less use in PvP and PvE, but as a result, I think the barrier of entry for PvP might be a little bit lower. Am I saying I'll never use Empower or Dark Pact? Obviously not. It might be one of those things that you carry a couple of copies of, and it has to be very situational, but simply the added damage and the fact that it doesn't get rid of weaknesses for what it does makes it much, much more of a choice than it used to be. That's probably a more strategic thing at the end of the day. But I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. What do y'all think of the Empower change, the Dark Pact change? Do y'all agree that this will affect PvP and PvE and other things? Or do y'all see yourself using it more? Maybe some of my predictions are wrong. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. Y'all see y'all soon. And yeah.